Okay, and Callahan, if you don't mind, talk a little bit about before you got here.
I grew up down in Foxboro, Mass, and throughout high school worked at the racetrack down there. There was a harness track initially called Bay State Raceway. So through high school I worked there during the summers. I mucked stalls, I walked horses. The next year I worked in concessions, I worked in maintenance. When I went away to college, I came back and worked a day job in a lumber yard, but night times I worked at the racetrack in the parking department, continued to work in admissions. At that time, it was right when the original Schaefer Stadium opened up and was involved in the parking for the Patriots games. And when I got out of college in '76, I was fortunate enough, or the ownership had changed at Bay State Raceway, and it now became New England Harness Raceway. And the owners, 50% of the ownership was through Eddie Andelman and his group, and the other half was Eddie Keeland, Joe Carney, and Dr. Tom Carney, which is where I got to know them. They were looking for someone inexpensive who knew a little bit about the place, and after working there for probably 7, 8 years at that time, I had the great fortune of being hired as the purchasing agent at New England Harness Raceway. Regretfully, the previous ownership had basically not paid the bills for just about everybody who sold anything to them. So it was a little bit difficult trying to create relationships again, but we were fortunate enough to get that job done. About 6 months later, I was promoted to assistant general manager, and the general manager was, for the most part, absentee. So I got the opportunity at a pretty young age to learn how to try to make a racetrack work, and continued there. In 1978 or 79, part of the ownership also owned a track in Kentucky, and they were looking to send me down there to try to improve things and try to prepare that track to sell. So I spent the next 3 years, or at least part of the next 3 years, in Henderson, Kentucky. And small harness track, but we had a lot of fun, got a lot of work done, and ultimately sold that track to some breeders from Ohio, and ownership was pleased, and I'd had a great experience. I got to learn an awful lot, and when I finished up there, I had come back to Foxboro for a brief time, but then got the call to come up to Rockingham.
Why did you get into the racetracks when you were a teenager?
Well, as a teenager, it was a job.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it an awful lot.
Okay.
I'm actually a civil engineer
Yeah.
by trade, and when I got out of college with a degree in civil engineering, it was a time that engineers really weren't being hired by too many people. Route 128 was kind of in trouble with their engineering group, and racetrack offered me something, and hopefully I had something to offer back.
Right.
And I've got great memories of it, and hopefully an awful lot of other people do too.